Farragut, and we've utilized your questions that were submitted. So thank you for that. That really helped drive this presentation so that we could address your questions, and also actually helped us to reflect on where we maybe had some gaps in our own communication to you prior to today. So that was very helpful for submitting those questions. It was actually, oddly enough, a great way for Kevin and I to also work with all the parents in the community, the administration, and even the students in the district planning for reentry, as well as the building. So thank you for that. And we know that things are going to adjust and change moving forward. And we will have more community forums and presentations to communicate with you in the future. So I did want to start with that. So really, again, the purpose of this forum is, as I mentioned, to answer your questions that you were submitted. And I wanted to share the flow of the forum for today. We have some topics that we'll be addressing in this order. At the end of each of one of these topics, we're going to pause and use the Q&A that for any questions that you have in that feature. So down at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A that you can put forth some questions. And we're going to take the breaks in between each of the topics so that we can have the questions be relevant and on target for the topics that we are. So we want to ensure that your questions are being discussed within the section. So if you could hold your questions for the section that we're talking about, that would be helpful for the flow of the presentation. And then at the end, we will try to address any questions that we didn't answer throughout the presentation. And then with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Principal Kevin Hanlon. Thank you, Kevin. Feel free to add if I missed anything.
No, I appreciate that. And I want to thank everybody for coming today. And I want to second what Jennifer said about feeling welcome to those of you who we had the opportunity to meet already. And for those of you who we have not yet met, we both very much look forward to that. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the technology. And first off, a big thank you to the Board of Education for approving the superintendent conference days that are now moved to the start of the school year. So district members can receive training on various aspects, such as safety management plan, our safety protocols, procedures, and instructional technology. The FMS teachers are going to be using an EdCamp / crowdsourcing model to help train one another on various uses of district approved instructional technology. And for parents, a phenomenally talented teacher, Ms. Shannon Holland, is going to be taking time to lead 3 workshops and next week. And then I'm going to be the point person for FMS to answer all individual questions. I'll be probably conducting some workshops regarding the Google suite of applications for education. And I'm going to be the go-to person if you have any questions throughout the school year regarding your Google instructional technology. And no questions so far.
That's great. Okay, so we'll jump right into the survey. So for anyone that joined Amy and Lou's forum already, this is a reiterated point for my Farragut middle school folks. This is a survey just letting you know and giving you a heads up. So throughout this presentation, you know that it's coming out Monday or Tuesday. So please stay tuned for that survey. And what we're looking for is some information from you to help us plan. So it will be really helpful for you to answer that survey. And we want to know what your plan is for September. The choices being, are you going to be a full remote live stream student? The Governor Cuomo placed out guidance for that you have that right, and that is a choice that you have, and every family is different, and we respect that. It's helpful for us to know these things for our planning purposes. We're going to ask for a quick turnaround time considering today's date and where we are, but hopefully this presentation will help with making that decision. Another option that you also have is for a full remote learning, but with medical fragility status, as the governor has used that term for students that are approved through our medical staff. So if you are submitting a doctor's note for that full remote learning with that status, that would just mean that you are required, you are eligible to have tutoring 2 hours per day for ELA and math. And then the third option would be that hybrid model for green and gold. And we're going to talk more about each of these models, but I wanted to come up front and share that with you so that you're in tune for that survey to help communicate to us and help with our planning purposes. So this is a graphic that we created really just to summarize the differences between the hybrid and the all remote model. Once again, this presentation is going to be posted on our website. Oh, actually, Kevin, are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Great, thank you. I should have mentioned that earlier. So we are recording this presentation and it will be posted on our school website. And we're going to be using this as a future models and reference. And as I said, if we're updating it and changing it. Looking at our hybrid schedule. This is the model that was chosen to start after the 2 weeks of distance learning. So this model will start, and the plan is to have that on September 21st. So the first 2 weeks being that distance learning, and then we would shift over to the hybrid model on the 21st as per Dr. Henning Piedmont's letter that came out this past Wednesday to you. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. The cohorts, we have everyone grouped in gold or green. Those color assignments are even assigned to students if they're in that remote learning. And the reason we did that is because we want all students back in the building. So there is that fluidity that if you do choose to go remote learning, full remote learning, you still have a color for in the event that you want to come back. We can't promise that it will be a 24-hour turnaround from the notice that you let us know that you want to come back, but we will work with you for a reasonable accommodation for the timing and structures and any structures that we have to work in the building to have you come back in. So there is that option. Every student has that gold and green label in their bus tab of the portal. It's just one of the easiest ways we could modify and change that and communicate that to you in a private way. If you go to your portal and you look under the bus tab, you will see gold or green. And to speak more to that too, we were really working early on to be flexible and helpful because of daycare and any sort of planning outside with these colors. But as a district, we've come together and said, you know, we have to stop making these accommodations and switches from gold to green because it really has created us to, it's been a struggle to concrete our planning purposes and our rosters. So we need to move forward with those rosters and assignments in classrooms and such. So we do need to stop moving any of those personal requests. So we do apologize for any inconvenience that affords you at this time. And lastly, I want to mention about cohorts. The cohorting for 5th grade is very much possible, also as in the K4 model. And that's because it's a single teacher with students in the room and with the specials teachers coming into that room. The problem with 6th through 12th grade, excuse me, with cohorts is it's not possible because there is shared staff between multiple buildings, Hillside, Farragut, and the high school, as well as shared staff between grades. So a 7th grade math teacher may also teach 8th grade or also teach 6th grade. So that kind of doesn't allow for cohorting because it's not a clean team, as they say it, or the students don't have the same teachers. So if we were to try and cohort, there isn't commonality between the teachers. So that was something we tried to do and we looked into, but we're not able to. This is a schedule, just giving you a highlight for the month of September. A few things about this schedule. If you notice, the white boxes for the 16th and 17th are, and we're going to speak more to that in a few slides. And the 9th and the 30th on Wednesdays are not flex days. And that's just going to be a simple rule moving forward that flex days will be offered on days that have a shortened week because of a holiday. So Yom Kippur is the 28th. So therefore there is no flex day that week, and we've shifted it that way. Our goal with the flex day really was to have equity for FaceTime for the students in each of the different color groups. So we wanted FaceTime for everyone, and we wanted it to be equitable and a structure and something that students can rely on and depend on, because I think we all do well with structures and organization. So that was the thinking there. Oh, did I go the wrong way? Thank you. So the Wednesday Flex Day student schedule for the middle school looks like this. And the reason this schedule was created was to avoid any scheduling conflicts for students without any overlapping. So teachers will start in the morning with some professional learning, either K-12, 5, 6, 7, 8, or just even in with teams or departments. And that's to help support them with this distance learning model and adjusting with technology. So it's gonna be really critical and important moving forward in whatever model we're in. Because I joked and said that they didn't teach pandemic teaching in college for anyone. So we are still adjusting and learning with all of that. So it's great to be able to provide this time for the teachers. And then we have in the afternoon for the middle school, grouped by different subject areas, times, like I mentioned, to avoid any conflicts or overlap. And this was done to provide students opportunities to have check-ins, small groups, conversations. Teachers can request students to come and join them during these times. These can be a question time. This is a great way to conference with students and checking for understanding. I will say that Wednesday, these flex days are instructional days. They are instructional days where students will have attendance check-ins in the morning, similar to what was done in the spring. And that attendance will be checked and followed through. And then if a student is making an appointment with a teacher or vice versa, the teacher's making an appointment with the student, that attendance will be checked, that they do attend that scheduled session for support, extra learning, enrichment, and checking for understanding in these time blocks. This is our FMS schedule for remote and for hybrid. So we have our period 1 starting at 8:15, our 9th period ending at the 2:44, and our academic coaching starting at 2:45. So all remote learning students and all hybrid students, whether you're in brick and mortar on 2 days or out for the other 3, are following this schedule. So fully remote learning, I'm going to talk about that in the next 2 slides, and I will share that majority of the questions received are about this. So I am going to just take some time to speak more about remote learning and what it looks like.
Yes, Jennifer, that would be great.
Because those questions
on that on the Q&A, so I think that'd be a safe start time.
Great. So for remote learning, we have interactions with students on these days are going to look differently for different classes and for different teachers' comfort levels. And you're going to have an attendance taken. There's going to be a meet and greet. There'll be instructions to the remote learners. In some cases, there may be some partnerships with students in the brick and mortar class and the students on the remote learning, whether those partnerships be for collaboration on a project or whether they just be for instructions and kind of buddies in classes to help each other through this model. And remote learners can be engaged in multiple different ways. And I also like to stress that I think even in any good teaching practice, that checking for understanding and formative assessments don't always come through just a Q&A, a question and answer, a teacher asking a student a question. There's many other ways to engage students and to check for their own understanding. And those ways we're going to be creative with those formative assessments. And we can do that through web-based platforms such as Nearpod that the district has just acquired. That's a way to also check for students' understanding. And then using that data to help drive instruction or setting up appointments for that academic coaching period later, or even for that Flex Wednesdays. So it's going to be utilizing technology in different ways to engage with students and check for their understandings for the remote learners differently. And that's going to take some adjustments and something different because this is an unusual model, but one that we think that we can do with some time and preparation and training. So remote learners can be engaged in multiple different ways. 5th grade has their skills period that they can still be checked in and check for their understanding there. The traditional email is still there, of course, and then as I mentioned, other web-based platforms. Even utilizing breakout rooms. If we're going to be working with Zoom and teacher training over the superintendent conference days, and breakout rooms is also a great way to engage learners and have collaboration within students. So there is going to be live streaming, and I'm going to talk about that on the next slide here. I must have missed a slide. So there's going to be live streaming for students with the camera on the teacher. That camera is not going to be facing the students. It will be facing the teacher. And that part of the breakout rooms is a great opportunity for the teacher to engage the students in different ways. And so Kevin, you're going to talk about social emotional learning?
Yep, I'm going to just ask a couple or answer and ask a couple questions out there too. And this is something I think you just spoke about a second ago, but I've been also trying to read the Q&A. Is remote interaction learning via live stream or Zoom? And then is it going to be interactive? How can the teacher be talking to students?
Great. So it will be live streaming through Zoom or through Google Meet. We have two different platforms that will be done. And just to, we have a slide to talk about this later, but happy to mention too, because we want to maybe have an image in our mind. The teacher computer is up in the front of the room near the interactive smartboard or Newline board or whiteboard. And the camera is facing the teacher. That's important to know that the camera, the webcam is not facing the students. The teacher will have a headset on that is tethered to that computer so that even through their mask that they'll be wearing, the students remotely can hear the teacher clearly. So the teacher can hear the students through the headphones, but when we did our beta testing, and thank you to Melissa Szymanski for helping in organizing that and the teachers that volunteered for that, it was a big learning curve to actually be in the room. I was one of the students in the brick and mortar, and there were 10 or so, a few students themselves and adults having a role playing, being students on the computer, and the teacher standing in front of the classroom, hearing with the headset on, looking at the 12 people in front of her, and then having the 12 people on the screen. And I remember at one point she said, someone asked me a question and I'm not sure who it was, because there was an environment kind of confusion that there's talking in my ears, but the people in front of me don't hear that talking. So that is one of the reasons, if not maybe one of the top reasons, why there isn't that interaction back and forth between the teachers and the students. The students in the classroom, in the brick and mortar, cannot hear the students on the computer, the remote learners. So that does cause some environmental confusion, and we need to work through that. And I think with practice and with training, we can find ways and comfort to adjust to that. So the teacher can turn to the computer and say, this is what we're doing today. These are the instructions for the lesson. And I'm going to ask you to mute yourselves, please, now. I'm going to do my mini lesson and have structures in to chat with them perhaps at the end of the class. And as I mentioned, using web-based platforms to find formative assessments and checking for understanding.
I'll just interject here, Jennifer and Kevin. So that test that you just mentioned really did, cause us to hit the pause button with regards to, the ability to reopen on September 8th in the hybrid model. That was sort of, not a clean test, if you will, because we really weren't, connecting to all children in different environments and different places in Hastings, to know exactly, what else we could learn or what else would be awaiting us if we didn't spend the time with our technicians working with the teachers in the classroom. So that first week of remote learning will be spent with the technicians in the classrooms with teachers while they are delivering remote instruction to test the headset to make sure that, what was discovered during this sort of smaller version of a test isn't really sort of symptomatic of something fairly, large and more complex. So this gives us a chance to work through, all those details so that, when we are in, full hybrid model, mode and we have to, make sure that children at home are hearing, the instruction, where, our remote learning plan really makes it clear that, the expectation is not for the teachers to have to, interact with the children in the classroom and then, run over to their Zoom or Google Meet screen and interact with the children at home, but that the G Suite collaborative tools and the other digital tools that are available that, teachers have been using for a while in some of the classrooms are the conduit for children to be working collaboratively, similar to probably how lots of you've been having to work. You work from home, you're using a lot of collaborative tools, and we have teachers who are very skilled at doing that. And they will be, working with their colleagues, but we'll also, through Melissa Smansky, have organized and make available some professional learning as both Kevin and Jennifer mentioned earlier on, that will help teachers to integrate, in very creative ways, the use of those tools so that the children are learning and they're applying, the skills, the concepts, and the knowledge that the teacher is imparting to solve real problems. And so, which is at the end of the day, what we want, content to be about, that you have to be able to do something with the content, and that this is a really great way, for children, to, find that as a habit in, as they re-enter the school.
And we've been working very closely with the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center on our bandwidth, on latency, answering all of those questions around making sure that this is actionable simultaneously with all of our educational professionals on either Zoom or Google Meet at the same time, engaging in the live stream while we have students in the brick and mortar environment. And to Dr. Henning Piedmont's earlier point, there's really no way we can do that until everybody is back. And we see what that looks like with all of the learners and all of the educators simultaneously engaged.
Thank you very much. So 2 questions that came in is, can a child on live stream ask a question? So I'm going to also just pose that as, I think it will depend on the structures and the comfort level and that type of lesson that the teacher has that day. So options may be that the teacher says, okay, because we don't want kind of Zoom fatigue and students on in the entire day. So the teacher may give her mini or his mini lesson and say to the students, okay, you have 15 or 20 minutes. I want you to go and do X, Y, and Z. It's in your Google Classroom. I want you to go to the Jamboard G Suite feature and write any questions you have there. Make sure you put your name so I can come back to you. And I want you back here in 15 minutes so that we can touch base and reflect as a class together. Then headset might come off. She can go, or he can go and interact with the students in the brick and mortar room while maintaining social distancing and such. And then coming back. So that using web-based platforms such as Jamboard, such as Nearpod, and structuring the lesson will be able to engage students remotely. But as I mentioned, that's going to take some time. That's going to take some training, and there's going to take some structures that need to be in place. And it might not happen every day. And that's also why we have Wednesday flex days for opportunities for students to engage with the teachers and ask questions, as well as the academic coaching, which is daily from 2:45 to 3:15. So there are other opportunities for students to connect with the teachers. And then another question was, describe how teachers would utilize breakout rooms. Breakout rooms in Zoom is a wonderful feature to promote collaboration. And that would be ideal if it was, maybe you might see breakout rooms these next 2 weeks in full distance learning, because the teacher can also jump from the breakout room to breakout room. Maybe a little bit more challenging in the hybrid model, because the teacher still has their face-to-face students in the brick and mortar. But you can turn to the computer and assign students that were already pre-established, maybe working on a project, into breakout rooms. And again, say, I'm gonna be back in such and such time, and we're gonna reflect as a class, or we're going to meet on this when you're back in the building. Let's talk about and checking for understanding in other ways as well. So the breakout rooms is done through the computer, through the web-based platform of Zoom right now.
And I have just one more question, then we'll move on. It's about a turnaround time. So if a student decides that they are hybrid first, but they want to go full remote, or vice versa, what's a timetable that student needs to be in order to put in that request?
So we don't, that's part of the survey that's going to go out on Monday or Tuesday, if I understood the question correctly, Kevin, so that they're going to let us know if they're going to go remote or hybrid. And then the idea that, as I said, everything is changing. So if a hybrid student wants to turn and go remote, full remote, that can be done very easily. But if a student wants to go full remote back into the hybrid, that's a little bit more complicated. I don't want to specify a date and a time turnaround on that. I know schools that are saying you're remote for the year. We're not saying that. We are saying we're going to work with you and know the building structures and the rosters and the class sizes, and we want you back in. We want you, we're inviting you back in. We want you here. We need you here. We'll work with you from that. So to give you a specific date, I'm sorry I don't have that, but I know soon we will have that protocol set.
All right, and let's go forward with the social emotional. So the Farragut sports staff is very talented and is going to be available and present during the school day. The social meetings that will be provided will be both topic-based and discussed and focused, as well as just for social interactions. There were meetings in the spring that were virtual, and they were all social, and they received very positive feedback. So the staff is going to continue to do that for the students as well. You can go to the next slide. Yep. So advisory. So we've discussed this with many interested middle school staff members. The staff members are excited, and they want to work together to develop an advisory program. The goal of the program is to create a strong support system for students to develop academically, socially, and emotionally. Middle school itself is a time for transitions between schools, classes, friend groups, becoming children to teenagers, and now transitioning back into school from a pandemic. So this is why the advisory program is essential, and why we have many interested middle school staff members who want to help make this a positive experience for everybody. And let me just hop on here.
Could I just interject while Kevin transitions? Melissa and I were, having a conversation with a group out of the University of Rochester yesterday that supports or provides professional learning for educators who are adopting, more of a, advisory type of program with, a strong foundation in social emotional learning within the framework of a curriculum. So that work has been, underway in terms of work that Melissa Szymanski and Jeanette Coker and the administrators have been engaged with or involved with. But we also wanted to make sure that advisory time is really truly committed to, that time when children, have a sort of a home base, a place to, make sense of, the transition back into school and ask questions and to be trained, around some of the safety protocols and to be able to have a place to have conversations. Melissa and I talked to this group from the University of Rochester just to sort of understand the flow of an advisory, and sort of one of the key places that advisory I think really fits perfectly is a middle school. And so the advisory will operate at both the high school and the middle school. And we talked about with the group that we're going to be using to provide some training for everyone, is this notion of welcoming rituals that will be a part of that framework, some engaging practices, so that they, the teachers and the students can kind of, integrate, those ideas, or, whether they're talking about resilience or, agility, or they're talking about, some of the current events that have, gone on, in our nation that, two concurrent, pandemics, one, the COVID-19 virus, and the other was, the racism, the issues driven by racism in this country. So having a place for children to have those conversations, within the framework of, social emotional learning, and being able to understand, how to have conversations about those things is really important. So we look forward to providing, some, professional learning, so that this is, advisory is not just, something that we have in our schedule, but it really does help our children to make sense of the world, to process, things that are happening around them, and to, have this place together to grow community and a sense of belonging. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that, we were devoting time to making sure that that operates well as, for children, for the sake of children, and for our teachers.
And one of the things I also loved about the Children's Institute, they reinforce the notion of an optimistic closure. So this idea that we have a toolkit, we've got strategies, and no matter how we're experiencing our day, our week, our return to school on any particular day, that we can take action and we can do something about that to mobilize.
Our next section is we're going to talk about health and safety. Goodness, I'm sorry, this keeps happening. So we have the app. We're going to be utilizing an app every morning. And I say we because it is staff and it is students. And I do want to really just pause here for a moment and stress how important this is. This is guidance provided from the state health department as well as state ed. This is a requirement. It is a requirement that everyone use this app to take a wellness check and a temperature check every morning. And with that said, to really get into routines and structures, especially with middle school students, even myself, I need to do it every day to make it a habit and be continuous that it does happen. So when you're in the hybrid model, for anyone in the hybrid model, the fact that you are not in the brick and mortar building for 3 of those 5 days does not mean that you don't have to do the app. We still want you to check your temperature, your wellness every morning. It's just the same part, make it into your routine, and the data will be looked at. We are looking at the data. Mr. Hanlon is reviewing the student data daily, and I am looking at the staff data daily. And for students that have an issue in this app and it's reported has a temperature, we will be speaking with them, working with them, connecting with our medical professionals and our staff. And we have 2 wonderful nurses here, and I've gotten to know them, and absolutely amazing, knowledgeable people. We have Sally Ann Collin and Joanne Cipollone. And I'm going to talk a little bit about their role and the nurse's office. But I do want to just stress, if you don't have a thermometer yet, please obtain one, because this is going to be utilized 5 days out of the week. So still in regards to health and safety, we have our stairwells and our hallways with lots of signage. Face masks are to be worn at all times, excuse me, not worked, at all times. And that is in the stairwells, that is in the hallways, and that is in the classrooms. The signage in the school is very apparent, very obvious, and we are just kind of this visual reminder. I go back to that idea of habits, and in order to create that habit of wearing your mask, we do need to enforce that. It is something that will keep ourselves safe and each other safe. So there is no exceptions to that, and we do want to follow through with that, and we'll talk about how we incorporated that into our code of conduct in a little bit. But to maintain that social distancing, we will not be using lockers this year. There is just too much of a crowded area, crowded space, and for hands usage and touching all over it, it's just not going to be feasible. So students are able to carry their backpack, and they will have their 24 by 24 polycarbonate shields. They were actually delivered here just the other day, so we have them in the building ready to go to each student. We have pre-printed labels with students' names on it to go on the shields, so that is ready to go. And each student will have a Chromebook to carry. If you haven't done so, please pick up your Chromebook. Kevin's going to be talking a little bit about that. We will need your Chromebooks in school and at home, back and forth. As a one-to-one school now, every student will need their Chromebook. And then any personal items. The hallways and stairwells have one-way directions, and there's going to be lots of signage for that. For the stairwells, one-way directional, and the hallways as well. So that's important that we do follow that. And as I said, there's lots of signage to help us with that. I've actually already started to do my movement in the buildings, sticking to that, again, to help create habits and flow in the building. School visitors. I usually love school visitors, guest speakers, volunteers. It's wonderful. Career day, it's great to have people coming into the building, and I'm all for that. So it kind of is heartening to say that we are not having school visitors right now. I am hopeful that in the future we will adjust those plans, but not right now. We are not having school visitors in the building. If you are coming late to school, you can come around to school late and go into the security vestibule area on the side, and you can sign in through there. You're not going to go through your regular entrance. If your parents are picking up students, they will also go to the security vestibule entrance. They will let our security guard know they're here to pick up their students, and then they're going to be waiting outside. Students will get called down out of class. They'll have their personal belongings with them, and they'll go out through the security exit. So we have that one entrance and exit for security for anyone coming to the building for a reason, for pickup or late arrival. And that is over through the security vestibule for the FMS entrance. And that is clearly labeled. All meetings will be scheduled remotely, and vendors and contractors will be working with our facilities and grounds department for appropriate time and drop-offs for supplies for the school. And that will be organized in a safe social distancing manner through that department. So I do want to share that, though, for parents dropping anything off. We ask that you not drop off a coffee for your son or daughter. That's not an appropriate really reason to come to the school and drop off any materials, such as maybe medication or their Chromebook. Absolutely, we will work with you and get those items to your students. But please make sure that it is necessary to visit the school and drop off any items, and that if it does happen, it's in the security vestibule on the side. This is just an example of some of the signage that we have around the building, all from the CDC website, so accurate information. And this is more of our signage that we have that's not from the CDC, but still all very appropriate and necessary. And a big thank you to the custodial staff and facilities and grounds for helping us hang up some banners and signs around the building. So just want to move still in health and safety to the physical classroom environment. Students will be seated at 6 feet social distancing or with a physical barrier in each classroom. This is a state guidance, and we are building and purchasing barriers in order to plan and ensure that the health and safety of everyone in the room is taken. So this depends also very much on your numbers and that from the survey about how many students are coming in hybrid and how many are coming for full remote. So that's also connected to knowing our class sizes and such, and why we also need that survey data. I spoke about this earlier, but I will mention again about the physical classroom environment. Teachers will be having that headset at the front of the room. Their computers have been moved. Again, thank you to the hard work of the custodial staff doing all this moving to the front of the room. They will have their own face shields with their own district provided mask and face shield, as well as a physical barrier that the custodial staff have created for them. And then in addition, the students will have their 24x24 personal barrier. And this is just reiterating a little bit about the webcam that we already talked about facing the teacher. It will not be recorded, these live streamings. And then also to share, we have an outdoor space, and thanks to the PTSA, we are looking to expand that. With the PTSA grant money, we've purchased some outdoor whiteboards, as well as some great signage to help kind of structure areas for outdoor. So we're going to call outdoor an outdoor classroom The Hill, and it has some tiered seating with an outdoor whiteboard, as well as kind of another name for maybe the grassy knoll for the outdoor space and such. And we're going to organize that and encourage teachers to bring their students opportunities. You don't have to do art necessarily inside. All art projects, maybe a sketching can be outside. Science class observations or an inferences, maybe that can be done outside. So we're gonna look and think a little bit more creatively. I'm sure if there's any journal writing or maybe a poetry unit, there might be opportunity to go outside. So we are gonna be encouraging that for the comfort level and a break for students and teachers. Face masks. We have ordered cloth face masks, and appropriate masks to bring to school on their own can be cloth based or surgical. Masks must be worn by all students and staff members. Mask breaks can be organized at the discretion of the teacher throughout the day and or outdoors. And I do want to emphasize it's the discretion of the teacher. We can't have students taking it upon themselves to have their own mask break. We want to make sure that everyone is still safe and keeping social distancing. So that's why teachers can organize that through their own structures of the classroom. So clear masks can be provided for reading teachers and staff members where appropriate. And face shields may not be worn in replace of a face mask. Face shields may be worn in addition to a face mask. The shields is only there to protect your eyes, and it's just a second barrier in addition to the face mask. So I did want to clarify that. In addition to maybe just mask breaks, and they're not wearing their face mask during lunch times. We're going to talk about lunch and recess in a little bit, but that would be an opportunity as well to have that break. So health screening, healthcare, and treatment. In order to stay compliant with the state, students and staff, if you're ill, please don't come in. I think Mr. Adipietro said it beautifully earlier, don't be a hero. We want you to stay home if you're not feeling well. Any signs that you have that. We also have our school nurse and they're here to support the staff and the students, but we don't want you coming in if you're not feeling well. We have 2 nurses' offices now. We have what is going to be kind of a COVID nurse's office or a sick nurse's office, I believe is the term they're referring to it as, and then a non-sick nurse's office or an area for Band-Aids or maybe medication, you know, an ice pack, something like that. So we have 2 separate nurses' offices now that will be staffed with 2 nurses, one in each one, as well as assistants to help and support that and manage that. And assisting the local health department with tracing transmissions of COVID. We're also receiving training from our school nurses during our superintendent's days, and they are going to help educate us on contact tracing protocols, on what to do when you see signs and symptoms. So the staff will be experiencing that information and different protocols for sensing students' illness and such. So I look forward to, again, their expertise and communicating that with the staff. This is kind of an easy slide here. We are not equipped to conduct testing for COVID-19. I know there was some talk about that in social media and or on the news that schools may be doing that, but Hastings and our neighboring districts, we're not equipped to do that. And nor do we have the authority to require students, parents, or staff members to get tested. So that is just something that we're not doing or entertaining. We have connections with the Westchester County Department of Health, and we can provide you with resources and contact information to do your own testing if that's something that you look to do. But students, staff, administration, families, we are not requiring that, and nor are we providing that. And continuing with health and safety, we have ventilation and air circulation. Joe Martirana and Maureen Caraballo have extensively spoken about this at Board of Ed meetings as well as other community forums. And just a simple update from my very basic knowledge and steep learning curve with ventilation and HVAC system and MERV filters. We did have I guess an audit or an evaluation is a better word, I apologize, of our systems. And everything that was recommended, they have followed through with and done and updated. So classrooms have the proper fresh air circulation. Filters are have been purchased and ordered and have been will be put in the gyms before September. All the recommendations that came from the evaluation is being followed through with. In addition to add, our custodial staff has checked all the windows in the room and they open for ventilation. All the air conditioners are working and available, and extras we do have in case something, one of them does break. So they are well prepared to support the staff and the building with ventilation and air circulation. And thank you to Joe and Maureen for that communication and guidance with that. Goodness. Okay. And cleaning and sanitation. This is our last slide in this section, and an important one, and one that we take really seriously. Every classroom has supplies of hand sanitizers and antibacterial wipes for the desks, for any of the surfaces, and these supplies are here for students as well as teachers. Now, we also recognize that not everyone likes those chemicals on their skin, so we are not mandating or requiring anyone to use them. Just they are there as an option for staff and or students to use at their leisure for their own comfort level. Classrooms have ventilation systems and the proper air exchange, as I mentioned before. And the bathrooms and the hallways are touch points that will be utilized for cleaning. Additional cleaning staff have been brought on from the nights to the days so that the staff is there to help support the population in the building and the added cleaning. The bathrooms in the middle school, I know is a question that came up as prior to the presentation. Someone submitted that, and it's a valid question. How are we organizing bathroom for students? Well, we don't want crowding in the bathroom. We don't want multiple students gathering in the bathroom, and that's something we very much want to avoid. Looking at our staffing, ideally it would be wonderful to say that we will have a monitor out there observing that. But at this time, I cannot promise that. So what we've also come up with a system from the FMS Reentry Committee, and I appreciate their thoughtful and creative ideas, because students will be on Google Classroom in their classroom. They're going to be able to sign up so that we have a record of who goes to the bathroom through a Google form. It's not public for the class, so the only person that would see it is the teacher. And then we're going to ask them to perhaps put a sticky note, not with their name or anything, just a pink or yellow sticky note on the outside of the bathroom door. And we're going to talk to them and educate them during advisory and proceeding really the start of school in these 2 weeks of distance learning about if you see 2 sticky notes on the bathroom door, might want to wait outside for a minute, might not want to go in. And right now we're going to really help them to understand and educate them about social distancing, and it's okay to wait in the hallway for a minute or two until someone comes out, and then you can go in. You got your sticky note on the door, and that would be a visual that there's 2 people in there or no one in there. And with that plan, you know, I'm sure we can still come up with other ones, but right now that is what one of the procedures we've discussed as helping with bathrooms, but we're flexible and open to thinking about other options. And again, if we have the staffing for it, having it being monitored. But to add to, we have our custodial staff that are making bathrooms a top priority. And they do have the use of an antimicrobial sprayer, which I know is really in high demand right now. And I find it very fortunate and lucky that Joe had the foresight to have one previously purchased before the pandemic. So that is a helpful and useful tool for cleaning and sanitation right now. Kevin, we have questions for Q&A.
Yes. A few questions that came up. One of them was just about paper towels in bathrooms versus hand dryers. Are the hand dryers going to be closed down and be exclusive to paper towel usage in restrooms?
That is a great question. I know the bathrooms that I've used have only the hand dryers, but to specify the entire building, I'm not sure I can speak to that, but I can find out more about that. Oh, Valerie, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
They will be taken offline because they counteract what, you know, and brings, you know, and sort of, they're like a little tornado storms, I should say. And those definitely are being taken offline so that that we don't use them, because they certainly will counteract what we're trying to do. So we'll have our custodial team will make sure that there's an ample supply of paper towels, obviously soap, and the custodial team will will be scheduled to visit all the bathrooms. That's a major priority area for any place, and certainly in a place with lots of children. So those locations will be closely watched and cleaned regularly throughout the day, and certainly for the purposes of replenishing paper towels and soap, there'll be a lot of eyes on those locations.
And that makes me think too, just about even soap. As a reentry committee, they were so incredibly thoughtful, even with thinking about, well, what happens if a student goes into the bathroom and there is no soap? So we're going to also educate and talk to them about, well, that is a top priority, and you need to let myself, Mr. Hanlon, and my assistant, Ms. Avila, and we will get on the walkie right away, and that's a top priority. So that's also just the details that the reentry committee has been so thoughtful with thinking about that, and we're going to be sharing those plans and ideas during our superintendent conference days with the staff.
There are also questions regarding the amount of things that students were carrying from class to class. I saw people were asking about the shield, which is remarkably light. I was able to hold one just the other day, and I actually tested one out. I think Jennifer can attest to watching me behind the shield, as well as students bringing the shield home every night as well too. That was another question that was asked.
And one that was brought up too with our reentry committee. The thought was that if they weren't bringing it home, where would they leave it? And if there was the best appropriate space for that. The thought was perhaps leaving it in a period 1 class because they are so light. And we're going to still work through that and then brainstorming that. And we'll be sharing that before the start of school with some of those details. But that was brought up and suggested. I think our thinking was we really need to see what they look like and how clunky they were. And they are, as Mr. Hanlon said, very light. And I could see that as something being left with their name on it in a period 1 class. It seems reasonable to me. We'll update and communicate that back out, and that is a great question.
And also, I'm getting questions. I'm trying to field some of the questions myself too, but there are questions that have not yet been answered that I think will be answered later in the presentation as well. So just keep that in mind too. If you didn't get a direct answer through the Q&A or through it being spoken live, your questions will probably be answered later in the presentation, and then we're also going to have time towards the end to answer some questions as well. And I'll take it going forward with instruction. So one of the biggest things that I want to come across right now is obtaining the Chromebook. That has to happen as soon as it possibly can. So if you have not yet reached out to myself or Ms. Sporelli, please do so we can make note of your request. Then we can set up an appointment for you to meet with Mr. Tony Jimenez or Christy Fadul, so you have your appointment to come and pick up your school-issued Chromebook. A Google Classroom is going to be the digital version of the classroom that used to be that is a digital version of the physical space of the classroom. And we're going to be using Google Classroom through various district-wide approved instructional technology platforms. A few of those are listed on the bottom.
Is it would it be advantageous, since maybe some parents don't know what those tools are, to just give a thimble, a thimble full of information about each of those?
I would be happy to jump in with that. So the first one is Screencastify, and that allows for extended video recordings. So in any blended learning model, that is an instructional resource that our educators have found to be very helpful. Edgenuity is the older version, grades 6 through 12 of Odysseyware, which is the K through 5. And Edgenuity and Odysseyware house self-contained courses, so to speak. So regardless of the content area, students can have instructional experiences. There's video embedded content. So those are really self-contained resources. And Edgenuity, especially for the older students, 6 through 12, is extremely differentiated in terms of what the offerings are. Achieve 3000 is going to be used as an instructional resource in the event of literacy intervention. And so that is really heavily focused on supporting our learners in a differentiated way through our ELA. IXL, we are just in the process of finalizing, but that has been a familiar web-based resource for mathematics that has been used also for an intervention and for assessment purposes. CAMI is a resource that allows for digital collaboration and annotation, which is going to be very helpful. Jamboard is actually one of the applications connected with our G Suite. So if you can imagine an interactive whiteboard where students can post it, and there can be, there can be different things that are uploaded. There's writing, students can draw, and everyone can be in it in real time. Nearpod is probably our most heavily requested resource by teachers, and we were really excited to procure this. Really strong digital collaboration opportunities, Q&A, also having a wide range of lessons. And it is a repository that not only is standards-based and aligned, teachers can add to it, they can modify lessons, students at home can be in it at the same time as students in the brick and mortar environment. Zern is a mathematics resource. We've procured that specifically at the elementary level. And keyboarding without tears is to support students with keyboarding. Again, the eye was on our youngest learners, supporting them because, again, this is a whole new experience for them to be navigating digital platforms, and there has been an increased need for proficiency with typing. So that will be available as well.
And just one other mention about Edgenuity and Odysseyware. As Melissa mentioned, it's a platform for coursework for any course that's offered at a secondary level, whether it's a course leading to Regents. There are AP course content materials there, math, science, social studies, English, and the teachers can use it to supplement instruction. Edgenuity is also a credit recovery operation or system. So, if a child is, missed some set of content that, presumably could impact their ability to complete a Regents exam or pass a Regents exam, or that Edgenuity is a great resource to help to mitigate that, and prevent a child from having to sit for a Regents course again if they passed, but didn't pass the Regents examination. And there are a whole host of other resources there that can also be used for interventions as well as for supplements for any lesson. So we're not requiring that teachers use those, but we are making them available, and Melissa has organized training and will continue to, so that can integrate those resources in smart ways that, that can help children, if they want, some more opportunities to engage with the content as well. And as teachers see that it's an important thing for children, certain children or all children to have access to.
So one of the questions that I noticed in the Q&A, and not to step on the middle school's toes because I know they're moderating that Q&A forum, but I did want to mention there was a question around if my child already has a Chromebook, should I also be accepting a district Chromebook? We would actually encourage you not to. There is a regional back order on Chromebooks right now. And again, Maureen Caraballo has been amazing in putting orders in early. So there was a canvassing done with the faculty, I want to say April, around any anticipated needs around Chromebooks. And then an order was placed shortly thereafter. And even though it was placed that early, the whole entire region is experiencing that back order. So we really do encourage you not to take that just yet if you already have one. And we will continue to work with families on that. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. That's important.
What does grading look like? So grading is going to look differently than it did in the spring. Grades and grading student work will be taking place with appropriate accommodations and modifications. And that includes your in-class assignments, your assignments cast out through Google Classroom, as well as any of the instructional technology platforms that we just spoke about before. In the library, Ms. Gracia is staying up to date with the ALA protocols. ALA is the American Library Association, as said in the slides, and is very much wanting to connect students to literature, where the idea of the curbside pickup drop-off is coming from. So she's going to somehow get an inventory about the students, where they're located and what novels they would like to be reading. And it's going to be a little drop-off pickup situation, which I think is wonderful that was brainstormed to come up with to still connect students to the world of literature.
And thank you to her for doing that. Okay, I apologize. I'm having clicking issues.
It's okay. Now I'm just hopping back to the chat, the Q&A. If we received a Chromebook and don't need it, should we return it? So Melissa, I'm going to forward that to you because you were just speaking about the personal Chromebooks.
Yes. First of all, I want to say thank you. You know, we keep saying it, that it takes a village, it takes a strong partnership. We are working on our one-to-one match for all middle schoolers and high schoolers. We want to make sure that we can redeploy. So if you don't need one, we will gladly accept it back and we will route it to our younger learners. So thank you for asking that. If we were ever in a position where we felt that someone legitimately will not have access, we will not be shy in reaching out to the community just to make you aware of that and being really transparent, because again, with all of this, we just need to continue to work together. So again, a lot of forethought has gone into ordering them. It is not in our control in terms of like a 6-month back order, for example. So if you have one that you're happy to give up, sure, we will take it. And then if we find ourselves in a real position of need, we will continue to be extremely transparent in communicating that out.
And just to add too, in regards to Chromebooks, I think especially this is necessary for middle school students. I already talked about habits, and just to revisit that idea that that's a responsibility now. You know, it's no longer carrying a textbook if that ever was done, and you're carrying your Chromebook. So that Chromebook needs to be charged every night. So there is that kind of maybe building that habit that while they're brushing their teeth at night, to charge in their Chromebook, so that the next day at school they do have a charged Chromebook, and there is no need to leave class to miss any instruction because the Chromebook isn't up and running. So that's just one of those one-to-one habits that we need to adjust and change. And I just wanted to put that reminder out there as we were talking about Chromebooks.
Another question that came up a few times is a technology orientation. So is there going to be some time, maybe in the beginning of the school year, where students can get to learn and better understand some of these educational apps themselves too? So we have like a teacher training that's going to be happening in the beginning of September. There'll be trainings for parents next week with Shannon Mulholland, who we're so thankful for dedicating your time for that. Then I'll be that go-to person throughout the school year for the parents, but the question came up for students as well.
Absolutely. I think that it would be, you know, unwise to assume that students know how to navigate Google Classroom and navigate even their email. We've talked about creating videos ourselves, and with the help of the teachers, even like a 30-40-second video to even just show students the proper way to write an email to their teacher, you know, with some etiquette, and just, you know, Mr. Holland, I need assistance with this and such, and signing it off instead of an email that is just wording in the subject. So we're very much talking about that and discussing how we can support that. I think our videos are going to come in and be shared to the students prior to the start of school. And then of course, the teachers are going to want to take the time, and will be taking the time, I'm sure, in their own classes to work through some technology issues. And that is something that even just benefit them to be doing and help their own practice, so that you get those kind of cobwebs out of the way from these past few months, and you embed some structures and clarity into your virtual classroom. This is where I keep this in this folder, and this is how you navigate to the calendar and such. So those supports would definitely be there, and just to the benefit of everyone for that. And we'll be finding ways to, as I said, create some videos and post them on our websites, or share them out to the community and for students as references in case they ever need to go back and refer to them.
And this summer, we had a number of educators working on establishing some signature practices. And the one that, Jennifer, that you were just referring to is certainly one of them. So it's around communications, so school-based tutorials for students and parents around Google Classroom practices, routines, logistics, how to access assignments, see calendars, attend video conferences, how to submit assignments, any kind of instructions that may be needed for a big assignments, norms and expectations for Google Meet and Zoom, having and accessing an instructional schedule. So those were all things that we worked on, and we have built into the professional learning schedule for the superintendent's conference days that are upcoming.
And another question that came up now was, I see it a few times about the use of lockers. So because lockers aren't being used, and students' cell phones. So would there be a change to the policy regarding students and their cell phones in the middle school because they no longer have a place to put them in their lockers because they're no longer using lockers this year?
That's a very good question. And I'm torn too, because I think that cell phone is a connection home for students, especially if they are walking or taking transportation, if they're going to someone's house after or an activity after. So I understand and I respect that connection and that ability to communicate with your children. And then I also have my assistant principal hat on, where I'm thinking that the cell phones need to be not used during the school day, and that could be problematic. But I also, recognize that we're not giving the lockers for those cell phones to be kept in a safe spot. So I'm going to say that we're going to come out with some clear guidelines on that. And I would, again, recognize the need to be able to connect with your students. So whether they stay in the backpack and they are not seen by the teachers, especially in the class, that would be a necessity and a concern, I think, for any middle school. It's a very common policy to have that cell phones are not allowed in the middle school and are stay in lockers. So under these circumstances, we will come out with some clarity and adjust our code of conduct with that verbiage for some clear guidelines for that.
It's sort of a larger backdrop associated with our existing policy. One of the things that, we have to make sure that we have in place, as you mentioned, looking at policy, Jennifer, is part of what this sort of digital disruptive, era has led us to understand very clearly is, we have to help young people to responsibly use the tools that they have available. And it would be, in my own sort of sense of what would make, what would make the most sense is, we know that our children are, going to be, using digital tools for for as long as, we're on this planet, that they'll be, they're an integral part of how they operate and function, and that we have to use the space that that we have here in our buildings to help them to use those tools responsibly. So that would be my own, mindset with regards to, that, it takes a whole lot more energy to, prevent than it is to teach, children, the imposing, don't do this and don't do that. But let's figure out how they can help, how we can help to educate them to use, to make good and wise choices when they have their Chromebooks, that they're not going on YouTubes, or using their phones for things that are not sanctioned for during the course of the school day. So, Melissa and I will certainly be, one of the things we're talking about next week is our code of conduct. And so I think this will be a place to, to have the conversation, that includes, a K-12, exploration. So thank you.
I have one more question regarding Chromebooks I'm seeing here, and this is just because I'm new, I'm not unsure. But do the Chromebooks the school is distributing have any restrictions into web browsing?
I believe that the web browsing restrictions don't come through necessarily the Chromebooks, but they come through the Wi-Fi. So our Wi-Fi is where the restrictions are. And that's, I think, in any area, right? You go to a Starbucks and that's where it is too. It's on the Wi-Fi that restrictions are. So if you're using your Chromebook at home and you're on your home Wi-Fi, that's up to the parents they put on there, but our school and district Wi-Fi definitely does have restrictions. Facebook is not being able to be accessed, other social media platforms, and certain, I'm sure, keywords and things are filtered through that and blocked.
And I'm not sure, but we'd have to check with Christian and Tony, if we employ a system called Securely, and Securely is a way for parents to know what their children are doing online and what websites and so forth that they've been to. So that'll be something that we have to make a note to check with Christian and Tony on, because that would be an important supplement to as a way of, as I said, just so that parents know what children are doing with their devices, and that's something that can be installed on the Chromebook, and it's a useful way to just, as I said, manage some any concerns that parents might have with regards to their children's browsing behavior.
And I'm getting some information too as we speak. So even at home, apparently there are some blocks through even just the computer and browsing system, because it's a school issued computer and the programs on the platform on the hard drive are downloaded from the school onto that Chromebook. So there are some restrictions even put through Chrome for blockage. So thank you for Maureen for chiming in with that knowledge. So there are some blocks, and we can touch base and connect back with some more information on what those blocks look like.
I think we're at the time. Let's move forward to.
Thank you. Exactly what I was going to say. We have 15 minutes left and we are in our last section of this presentation. And this is just talking about some of the details of an FMS student's day. We have signage outside for arrival. And that was really done purposefully because our goal is really to stagger the arrival and exit of students to help increase social distancing. So the doors look similar, but they are separate entrances. And then 7th and 8th grade is around the other side of the building near Washington Wing. These entrances and exits were thoughtfully created because of the location of them to the students' classrooms in that grade. So 7th and 8th grade is around on the other side in the Washington Wing because the majority of their classes are on that side of the building. So again, trying to minimize, the movement in the hallways and stagger the arrival and exit locations we're done with. So when students, please only enter through your entrance that is assigned and obviously clearly labeled. Upon entrance, there is hand sanitizers for students to use if they'd like. Bringing just back to lunch and recess, wanted to share a little bit about that. And I know some concerns came through in questions before the presentation. So thank you for that. And I hear you. This is an important and a big concern for health and safety as well as structures to the day. So the cafeteria usually holds one full grade with even extra room there. But within the hybrid model, because we're going to be at 50% density already, we could potentially put 50% of one grade in the cafeteria. However, we recognize that even with face masks off and the physical barriers, that's not an ideal situation for some families and students. So we are looking at alternative outdoor dining space. And that really will depend on staffing, monitors, and just the facilities in itself. So considerations and discussions have been even just eating and recess over near Reynolds Fields, separating over to a different area of the school, even if we need to utilize a different area of the parking lot and maybe perhaps move some parking. So we're exploring those options and wanting to give give outdoor eating dining areas as available for students to reduce that option, to reduce the numbers even below 50% in the cafeteria. In addition to looking at that social distancing, increasing that, we will have meals prepackaged and on a grab and go, spaced out throughout lines so that they can easily come in and do that in a safe manner. Food preparation and spaces are going to be sanitized daily. Surfaces are cleaned. The lunch tables are going to even be moved out and separated even more inside, and cleaning in between all of the lunch periods. There are recess markers outside as a reminder on the ground that will be put there for even social distancing. And sadly, even just having little ones myself, we're gonna not be able to use our playground to start. And that's really because we want to make sure that we have structures in place for safety. My hope is that as a district, we can use the playgrounds in the future and even in the near future. But right now, the recommendation is with any aerobic activity, it's 12 feet apart, and managing that on a playground set right now might be too ambitious. So it is a goal for the future, but for right now, the playground would not be an option.
You can certainly take them on walks on the track, in the track area, because that's, right here, and pretty accessible. So we'll be making use of all of our, fields and spaces that, I think children will also be happy to spend time in.
Now, Reynolds Fields is absolutely beautiful. Mr. Hanlon and I were walking the grounds the other day looking for different opportunities for recess, and just an ideal spot. So definitely looking to explore that option. Mr. Arnett, if you're on as a panelist and you wanted to speak about physical education.
Yes.
Sorry,
Hello,
Mr. Merchant.
everybody. That's okay. It's Jesse Merchant, the Director of Health, PE, and Athletics.
The famous Mr. Jesse.
I just wanted to share some of our thoughts about physical education, and a lot of that has some crossover within what our music department and their classrooms may end up looking like. So I'll kind of bounce back and forth between the two just to give a sense of what September may bring. Very much like the high school and middle school, we will not be using our locker rooms for physical education. We're asking that all students arrive to school on a day when they're attending PE to be appropriately dressed for physical activity. And like so many of our classrooms, music and physical education will really try to use our outdoor spaces as often as possible. Obviously, the weather may impact this and facility usage, but it's really going to be one of our greatest assets as we come into the school year. I think we heard just a little bit before, of course, all of our activities in both of our disciplines will be socially distanced by 6 feet. But if any of the activities we're engaged in are aerobic in nature, such as any of our performers who are singing, some of our wind instruments, or our students who are participating in physical activity in PE, we are going to maintain 12-foot social distancing through all of those activities. One of the highlights from our Farragut Middle School PE curriculum is going to be a focus on kind of new and innovative items. One example of that would be hiking, orienteering, the safe use of the outdoor spaces, a space that we find is so important these days with getting physical activity for all of our students. We are also rolling out a web-based platform for physical education, which our community will hear more about over the coming weeks. Our PE department is currently working on developing the curriculum and aligning with our physical education standards. In both physical education and our music education classes, equipment and instruments will not be shared between students. And while in class, masks will be worn for all PE and non-wind instrument classwork. So just a quick note about interscholastic athletics. Currently, we are still unable to engage with our student athletes at any level, whether it's at Farragut Middle School or Hastings High School. At the high school level, we often engage in preseason work with our students to get them ready for a season, but we're still on a NISFA pause, which has been pushed down from the state. While travel sports can be, can go on, our school sports cannot. So NISFA has identified Monday, September 21st as the earliest interscholastic sports could come back. Now, that is still not official. We're still waiting on the governor's approval, and many of us athletic directors were hoping to get some information on that today. We do know of a few things that may be helpful for people to keep their eye on. While it's very likely that if we are able to have a modified season, it will likely begin after Monday, September 21st. The earliest registration would begin through Family ID would be on September 8th. That would be the earliest. We also have a few other dates that we hope can help us provide additional information to our 5th through 8th grade families, and of course, more specifically to our parents and athletes in 7th and 8th grade. So on Thursday, September 24th, as always, we will engage in the back to school night presentation this year. Topics will be rather broad, geared at all of the different grades. At that time, we'll have further guidance, hopefully, on what kind of program offerings we'll have. We will have to limit team size in the coming year, so we will be able to discuss that further. And of course, the guidelines that we're following within our interscholastic athletic program. On Friday, we've scheduled, September 25th, we've scheduled a virtual modified sports forum, and that is a place that we will be able to provide much more specific information geared towards both the parents and 7th and 8th grade students that would like to engage in interscholastic athletics, potentially for the fall, but also possibly for the remainder of the year. During that meeting, the topics would be about our philosophy and expectations. Once again, we'll dive into more detail on topics like our guidelines, our COVID guidelines, and the limits we'll have to put on team size. Just one or two other thoughts on it, which would be that like so many other places in the school day, our practices will likely have to be staggered, and we'll be using cohorts for many of our sports programs when we're given the okay. And if interscholastic sports are not available, our hope is to really put some of our attention into running intramural programs for our students in grades 5 through 8, so that they still have an opportunity outside of the school day for physical activity. So if you have any questions, please feel free to forward them to me via email. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Merchant, for taking the time to explain that and share that information. Appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna move on towards the last few slides. Kevin, you're talking about after school?
Yep, after school. Academic coaching is going to take place both in the full remote and the hybrid models, where students can visit a teacher if they need support or to ask a question or weren't sure about something during today's lesson. And a teacher can also tag a student and ask them to come see them during the academic coaching period as well. Clubs will be virtual this year, and the library will not be open after school. So we're trying to cut down the social distancing of students, and it's not going to be a place for a student congregation because the spaces may be used otherwise after school. And the code of conduct. So there are two examples that the FMS code of conduct is being reviewed because of the district remote learning plan and the reentry plan, and working with the committees as well too, with their great and valuable input. Something else up there that we didn't put is about Zoom backgrounds for students. But the next steps with the FMS code of conduct is to be reviewed, approved, and then it's going to be sent out to the FMS community.
So That does conclude our presentation. And I know we have some time left and some questions to address, and I'm just going to quickly address a few of them. Will FMS be utilizing substitute teachers? Yes, we will this year. We actually just had a job fair the other day, and Mr. Hanlon was doing lots of interviewing, so thank you. We are still utilizing substitute teachers for any absences. Will childcare be provided for essential workers? Childcare will not be provided from the district right now for essential workers. However, childcare for essential workers would happen if it was mandated by the governor again, as it was in the spring. So that was something that came out. So it is possible if that is what he deems necessary in the time and what the environment is, and then Hastings would follow through with that guidance and provide it again. But as of right now, for the distance learning that's happening for the start of the year, we are not providing the child care for essential workers. And live streaming during remote learning, will it be recorded? If I didn't mention that, I'm sorry, I thought I did, but it will not be recorded, and the camera will be facing the teacher. The webcam will be facing the teacher. Kevin, was there some questions that we could address in these last few minutes?
Yep, I see one question about band, orchestra, chorus, and where it is during the school day, as well as in the schedule, as well as what will happen if a student goes remote. So the band, orchestra, chorus has its own period in the school day. I know there's a big schedule change too with Farragut Middle School from years past to this year, but I know that it has its own slotted schedule, own slotted period in the scheduled school day. And if the remote choice is chosen, then it'll still be live streamed too. Seeing that students are going to be sharing instruments as well, they're going to be having, I'm assuming, their own instruments. Another question that I see just popped up was about student schedules, and when those are going to be coming, and if they're going to be getting those before September 8th. Yes, definitely those before September 8th.
August 27th, I believe they will be going live.
And I'm just scrolling through.
And may I just mention, maybe while you're doing that, just a thank you to the parents in the community. I feel that, in presentations like this, it comes off, and I'm going to use the word cold. And that is just not what I want to portray. There's been just so much care and thought going into all of these decisions, and we adjust and reflect and modify because, we, and I say we, the teachers, the staff, the administration, we're in education because we care about children, and frankly, we love them, and we want them to have a great day and a great experience. So, we're going through these slides and we're talking about all of these structures and protocols, but it hurts us, I think, to our core, because in reality, we really just want them all back in. We want everyone to be safe. We want everyone learning. So I did just want to, share that we are very focused on the emotional well-being of your children. And we realize that this pandemic has been traumatic and frankly trauma for many of them in different ways and in unique circumstances. And we recognize that, and we want to support and make sure that everyone feels connected and builds those relationships and feels safe. And when we establish that environment, I think then the best learning will happen. So I did just want to say that, and also just thank you for taking the time. And you have this contact information. Mr. Hanlon and myself are available to chat with you, and we've chatted with many of you already. And thank you for that, and we will continue to do that. So any other questions out there we can answer in the next few minutes?
There are a few questions. One question that I saw come a couple times was, if a teacher takes the class outside to use the outdoor classroom, will students who are remote be able to access and live stream the class if they're outside? If I remember correctly, I think Melissa, I think this was spoken about at the high school forum as well too. So if you wouldn't mind,
I'm happy to. It's highly unlikely. We do have hotspots that are mobile, and so we have tested that out with not consistent response. So there are commensurate experiences that will be in terms of assignments and things that students can access that would be in Google Classroom as part of the assignment suite. But we cannot guarantee that anything happening outdoor would have reliable Wi-Fi.
That is not specific to Hastings. The Lower Hudson Regional Information Center informed all of its participating districts that they are running into tremendous, challenges to maintain and also upgrade bandwidth for the various school districts that are, entertaining and preparing for the same, sort of outcome, which is to make sure that when children are in and when teachers are streaming from their classrooms, that requires a tremendous amount of bandwidth and capacity, and that they themselves, as the hub of all of that, and the support for all the districts, and certainly a major support for us, because we don't have our own technology department, that they are they've already sort of given us a heads up that they're going to do the best that they can to manage what's happening between the walls of, and within the structure of our physical classroom spaces. But outdoors is not something that, we should, anticipate that's going to be possible or reliable just based upon, the heads up that we were that we received today. So, teachers, of course, are going to have other resources in the Google Classroom that students can access in the event that happens. And Jesse has done a tremendous job of locating one of those digital resources for physical education and health. And Jesse, I don't know if you wanted to mention, give us sort of like a 1-minute overview of that, just so that parents are aware that there's been a lot of thought about what other resources are available to support various content areas.
Yeah, I want to give all the credit in the world to the physical education department, because starting back in March and April, we really started to, like every teacher in our building, think about what we were doing and how we were delivering it to our students. Back during the early stages, we were really working, every minute of every day trying to put together a really nice package. One of the things to come out of that process and those discussions was a web-based platform, which is starting to be used by a few of the districts locally. I'd like to think we're kind of on the cutting edge of bringing that technology here, but it will be a wonderful asset, a great resource for our teachers in the delivery of physical education concepts, but also such a wonderful way to supplement any of the asynchronous work that students might be doing outside of the classroom. The best thing about it is that it will be very easily used whether students are here in the building or they're remote, and will really help us provide a really a great, meaningful experience for students, no matter where they're learning from, whether it's in their living room or they're in a gymnasium or outdoors. We can use this platform through that. So there will be more information over the coming weeks, because thanks to the Board of Education, we just recently got access to this platform. So the department itself is kind of feverishly working on getting it ready, and of course aligned with our standards and all the benchmarks that we're working towards.
Thank you, Jesse.
I just want to say thank you to everybody too before we sign off. Jennifer, it's been the welcome that we've received from people and community members and our fellow administrators and our teachers and staff and faculty and parents and students during the lemonade stand. It's been wonderful, and we're working extremely hard to do the best we possibly can for you and the students, and then in Farragut Middle School and Hastings General. So thank you so much for the warm welcome. I can tell you that Mrs. Sprelli and I are having a wonderful time, and we appreciate all the input and thoughtfulness and people reaching out to us immensely. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our presentation. Feel free to reach out and connect with any other questions that weren't addressed. And I appreciate you joining us this afternoon, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.